Hello everybody, today I will be talking about some of the methods that help me go pretty problem-free when it comes to writing my bachelor's thesis at the end. And I hope some of those tips will help you with your bachelor or master thesis. I know once you get the methodology going, it is I don't see any other outcome. So yeah, let's go over to the tips and see what you can do to what seems like a big challenge at the beginning. So quickly, the motivation behind making this video. I know that everybody that had to write their own thesis has faced the thought of how am I going to get 80 or maybe like 50 to 80 pages worth of actual scientific text, and how am I going to have so many ideas, and how am I going to have everything connected. It sounds and it seems like a very big project, something that probably you haven't really done before. Maybe the biggest project that you had to write before was like a few pages long, maybe like 5 pages long, and even that took kind of like forever to finalize and kind of like plan out. It can get very demotivating at the beginning. And actually, I would give something I would call like an advice number 0. Think about the whole thing as a goal. Don't try to plan the whole project. Try to focus on single ideas. Try to basically achieve those ideas. And at some later point, you'll kind of start piecing them together. So basically, separate this big problem into smaller problems. For anybody that's into computer science, you would, or probably even just science, you would definitely see the pattern here. We are often taught to do the same thing with any problem that we face. So basically, try in the best case scenario to not really think about those 50 to 80 pages, but maybe just like I said, in the best case, you would have a single task each day, and each task would more or less be something that you can achieve in a single day. So my first tip would be to find your productive times of day. When I started writing for smaller projects, for example, you had some other course that required you to write 10 pages, I kind of noticed that I have times of the day that I really am a lot more keen and a lot more keen to write, and I have a lot more ideas for what to write. And there are times of day that even if it was like I had to write something, I knew I had to do this, I couldn't really bring myself to. So in this case, it is best to find the time of day where you are mostly creative. For me, it was the beginning of the day. I would basically wake up in the morning, and I found out that the best time for me would be the very first thing after I wake up. So I would quickly just take a shower, make some breakfast, and go to my computer, and basically I would write for the next 2 or 3 hours until I'm kind of like run out of ideas. For example, I would go to one of those days, I would go to this section, and I would basically try and write everything about I would think about the introduction until at some point maybe I'm here and I'm already kind of tired. Then I would just stop writing and focus more on some other creative parts of the project. For example, do I need something like this graphic here? Like I was talking about something before, and then I was like, okay, the thing that I talked about would also fit a graphic to actually display to people what this concept was meant to say. And but yeah, just try to focus on just the writing part for the most energetic time of your day. Finish that, and through the rest of the day, you should also kind of have your mind free from the burden of, okay, what I have so much things to write, what's the next thing to write, and stuff like that. Like after you've done your writing part, you can actually kind of relax and just think about the creative part, and or maybe you would just go back and improve on your text in a kind of like in a mindless way, right? You can just kind of go for spell checks and I don't know, grammar checks, sentence structure, things that wouldn't really impact you mentally that much. It will be mostly just like some ideas that you kind of see and try out and want to see the results of. So at least for me that helped a lot, and it is the main, I think, one of the main factors that kept me moving, because I knew after the first 2-3 hours of kind of like small mental breakdown of trying to piece everything, like this chaos of thoughts and ideas and kind of like worries, after that time I would actually kind of be free and have my own creativity time for the rest of the day. And it felt very gratifying. So I hope this helps. So my second advice, and this is going to be a short one, but I think it is very important. You have to kind of figure it out yourself. But the advice says, try to write something every day. So it doesn't matter if it's a single paragraph even. It doesn't really matter. You have to try to write something every day. This will help you keep your tempo, keep your momentum, and it will kind of make this habit in your brain of like, okay, did I actually do my work today, and your brain will start kind of reminding you that you have to do your work. It will kind of prepare itself for this writing phase every day, and it will actually get used to that, and you will notice that you're making progress without even worrying or having to worry about it too much, because it's just, okay, I will sit down, and as long as I have some creative thinking about what to write and how to write it, I will just do that. And if I do my writing for that day, I know that even if it's a little bit of text and not 5 pages or something crazy like that, it would still matter, because every chunk matters, and this iterative process is actually what makes writing such a big project easy. And yeah, just try to iterate, just try to write every day. Okay, so advice number 3 is what I call iterating over your ideas. What I mean by that is, well, if you think about your end result, for example, I've been talking about some stuff here, and then I have these big bullet points, and they kind of all fit together. And for example, afterwards you would have more text, and then of course you would probably have some conclusion stuff, and it all kind of feels like a big thing on its own. So in order to actually make each part have its own weight and be content rich and actually make a lot of sense, you should really not try to just have it in one go. What do I mean by that? When I'm at a certain point, for example, I don't know, I was here by the end of one day, and then I started writing this part, and I was writing, and then it came at some point I took a break, and then I was like, okay, now I have to do the contributions part, and how am I going to write the contributions? I don't know. It's like many different ideas. How do I actually make something that's credible, and something that sounds like that I actually did a good work? So what I would do is I would think about all the ideas that I had to put in here. For example, all the different contributions that I made, and I wouldn't really try and have them in a structured order or something like that. I would just like think about, okay, what did I do? And whenever I remembered something that I did, I would just write a few keywords. For example, I don't know. So I would basically write something like, okay, VTune microarchitecture utilization correlates to fast HMS results, something like that. And this would be the only thing I would put here. And for the other stuff, I would write something about the code that I wrote. I don't know, like some minor, very short keywords, or half sentences, half arguments, and I would just kind of brainstorm through all those things. And then I would just think about at the end, when I kind of run out of those key things that I come up with, I would just look back at all those key points that I made, and Then for each key point, I would iterate over that one. So from the example here, I would see Vitron's microarchitecture correlates to FastAGMS results, and then I would try to come up with a more like a structured scientific sentence, maybe a couple, depending on how much I have to say about that, how much basically on how many thoughts I have about it. And then what basically was at the beginning was an empty list suddenly became a list of keywords, and then it started slowly transforming into whole sentences. And I think this is a way easier approach than just trying to come up with each sentence in one go and always trying to keep the whole idea in your head. I think it's for smaller projects it is actually probably doable, and I know I've done it in the past, but for big projects I think it is just too much mental, it just taxes your mental, just your mind too much. And just iterating like this is definitely a way better approach. So basically I had maybe one or two keywords here, and then I had in the first iteration I already had a couple sentences, and when I was satisfied with that, I moved to the next one, and then at some point I saw that I already have this whole block here, and I was like happy with it. And then I was like, okay, let's see if it all makes sense. And since you already have the sentences laid down, it's a lot easier to focus on those meta things, like does it translate well from one to the other, how's the ordering, how's the sentence structure and stuff like that. So I did that, and maybe I saw some sentences that didn't really fit together. Then it was easier to just fix that one sentence, and then I read it again, and I was kind of satisfied, and I was done with it. So just iterating over your problems, and not trying to have the whole thing in one go is it is just easy for you, or just easier for you and for your I don't know, like mental state. So yeah, this is the third tip, and I think this is one of the most important ones, combined with the tip that you should write every day, that actually made the biggest difference. Okay, so the fourth tip would be what to do after you have written your part for the day. So let's say you had some sub problem that you had to solve for the day, and you've written your parts and you're kind of okay with it, and you're actually happy that you have something, at least up until this point in your thesis, that makes sense, that you can actually have as part of the thesis. I would at this point I would maybe go have lunch, kind of let my mind kind of cycle through all the events that I went through, and after that I would spend my afternoon kind of trying to reflect on what I wrote, how I wrote it. I would try to reflect on other creative ideas, like is there something missing there? Is there something graphical that might be that might add additional help to that? I would think about, like, roughly about the bigger section, for example, because you're now in a sub problem, right? So maybe I would think about the general section, which is in this case the introduction section. Is there something, how did I glue together, for example, the part before it with what I just wrote? How am I going to continue on? Is this the end of this sub problem, or am I continuing with that, and so on? So basically you still don't really focus on the whole project, although you can still kind of have a couple of glimpses of okay, what's the overall structure, but I'm still focusing on kind of like the specific domain that I'll be probably going for the next 2 weeks. I would basically try and reflect on your current work, on the current status, and kind of maybe plan your step for the next day. So with that, you basically solidify the decisions you've made so far, and it actually kind of frees up space for the decisions you would do later on. So the fifth and final tip that I would give you is very similar to the previous video that I made, where I was talking about having some form of version control for your programming part. So in this case, this website offered me a way of keeping so-called labels, and these are kind of like timestamps, and you can see chronologically where I was happy with a part. I would basically save the project, and if I had to, I don't know, change stuff and come back to that later, I would always have a chance and not really lose like big parts of what I wrote, and thus not lose big parts of text or time. So yeah, I think this is very important as well, and I think that with this way of doing things, you would be more than secured when it comes to doing changes to your text and not having to worry about breaking tons of work that you did before. So yeah, these are the 5 plus a 0 tip at the beginning tips and methods that I used in writing my own thesis. I know from my personal fact that I had almost 0 problems with my thesis. The most challenging part was just those 3 hours of writing every day, and if somebody told you that you can be assured to have a good thesis by just writing 2 to 3 hours every day for a couple of months or something like that, I don't know, to me it sounds a lot more achievable than the daunting thought at the beginning of, oh my god, how am I going to write 50 to 80 pages of scientific text? Like, nobody's going to take that seriously. Like, I know maybe different people have different worries, but I'm pretty sure that with this approach, you wouldn't really have to worry about those things, and you can just focus on those 5 or 6 different steps. And I hope that your experience turns out great, just as mine. So that was it. Thank you for listening, and I hope this was educational. And for further such videos, just make sure to stick around to this channel, hit a like if you like this one, and have a good day.